Imagine for a moment that the way you think not only transforms your life, but also the world around you. What your mind sows can blossom like a field of infinite possibilities, and this sowing is the same that Christ taught us to cultivate. Thinking like Christ is not just a spiritual concept. It is an invitation to break the chains of worldly thought and elevate yourself to a way of thinking that reflects the divine. In this text, based on the powerful teachings of Emmet Fox, you will immerse yourself in the very essence of how to transform your mind, freeing it from the limitations of the material world to embrace a spiritual vision that opens doors to a life of abundance, peace, and harmony. This is not merely a shift in thoughts. It is a complete rebirth of consciousness, a path to a deeper understanding of the divine spirit that resides within you. Every word of this text has the power to transform you, to help you see beyond the visible circumstances, to uncover the infinite truth that lies within. It's not about escaping the world, but facing it with the clarity and strength of the Spirit, transforming your reality by learning to think like Christ, with power, with love, with understanding, with unwavering faith. So prepare for a journey of transformation. The way you think today will create the world of tomorrow. Are you ready to think like Christ and claim your divine inheritance? The door is open. The journey begins now. The greatest mistake a spiritual student can make is imagining they have already understood. Nothing paralyzes inner growth more than assuming that accumulated knowledge is enough. God is not grasped through memory, nor reached through intellect. To think like Christ is not to repeat his words, but to embody his consciousness. It is not about following him with sentimental devotion, but about thinking from the same principle he manifested in every act, every silence, every prayer. This book was not written for beginners. It is not a manual for emotional comfort, nor a collection of feel-good phrases. What is demanded here is depth, willpower, and mental discipline. Because if you truly wish to think like Christ, you must renounce thinking like the world. And that is not achieved in a day or a week. It is a process of death and rebirth, of radical denial of error and complete acceptance of truth. Christ is not an external symbol. He is a way of thinking, a mental structure based on unity with God, on non-resistance, on absolute forgiveness, and on the spiritual authority of the I Am. To think like Christ means to stop interpreting life through appearances and to begin seeing it through the law of God. It means discerning between what seems and what is. It implies abandoning all judgment based on the senses, every reaction born of ego, and the habit of analyzing events through fear, comparison, or human desire. The mind of Christ is not moved by what it sees, but by what it knows. The mind of Christ does not react. It creates. It does not condemn. It transforms. It does not doubt. It affirms. The advanced reader will know that this path is not an improvement of their current thinking. It is the annihilation of that thinking so that another, completely different one may arise. A way of thinking without anxiety, without struggle, without sterile effort. In essence, it is a ceasing to think like man in order to think as a child of God. This book is a detailed map of that inner journey. There is no other purpose, no greater urgency. Each chapter unfolds a stage of the process. Each page unties a mental knot. Each exercise takes you beyond your usual mind, into that space where Christ thinks in you, as you, through you. You are not asked to believe blindly, but to practice consistently. You are asked to suspend doubt for a moment and try, because whoever thinks like Christ lives like Christ, and whoever lives like Christ is no longer subject to the world. Prepare yourself, not to read but to be transformed, not to learn more but to become different. This work is not an explanation, it is an invitation. It invites you to once and for all think Christ, and in doing so you will see how everything else changes. For as his thought is in his heart, so is he. Proverbs 23:7, a manual of advanced spiritual thought based on the teachings of Emmet Fox. We've noticed that over 80% of visitors to our channel aren't subscribed. You can support this project by clicking the subscribe button and liking the video. Thank you for inspiring us to continue creating more and better content for you. Are you ready to transform your life? Chapter 1, The Mind of Christ, Active Principle of Creative Thought. To think like Christ is not to imitate Jesus. It is not a repetition of outward actions. It is an inner transformation, silent, total. The mind of Christ is not made of religious ideas. It is built on principles. It is a mind that thinks from cause, not from effect. It is the universal mind, operating consciously through the individual. The Apostle Paul expressed it in his letter to the Corinthians, "But we have the mind of Christ." 1 Corinthians 2:16. He did not say, "We will have," or "We aspire to have." He said, "We have." It is already present like a spiritual seed in every human being, but it must be activated. And that can only happen by renouncing the old mind. The unredeemed human mind lives enslaved by time, appearances, and fear. It observes an event, judges it based on past learning, and reacts out of habit or emotion. That automatic mechanism many call thinking is not thinking at all. It is repeating, resisting, fearing. The mind of Christ, on the other hand, does not react. It responds. It does not judge by what it sees, but affirms what is. It is not swept away by the mental current of the world, but remains anchored in the principle. Creative thought is not a personal invention. It is the recognition of truth and its constant affirmation in consciousness. To say that Christ thought with power is to misunderstand. Christ did not think with power. Thought itself was the power. The Christ mind is the law of God in action. What it thinks comes to pass, not by magic, but because it is perfectly aligned with the first cause. The law responds to truth. If you affirm truth, the law manifests. If you deny truth, the law halts. Just like that. Exact. Practical. Every thought that flows from the inner Christ has authority. Every idea born from the human ego is doomed to fail, no matter how brilliant it may seem. What then is the mind of Christ? It is the part of your consciousness already united with God. It does not need to learn, only to express. It is like a spring of living water rising from the depths of your being, but buried under layers of false thinking. You don't need to create the mind of Christ. You already have it. What you need is to remove the rubble, cleanse the channel, and empty yourself. That is the first discipline, empty the cup. Creative thought is not born from effort, it is born from clarity, and clarity is reached only when thought ceases to orbit around itself. While you focus on what you lack, what you fear, what you desire, your mind is in darkness. No matter how much doctrine you know, no matter how many affirmations you recite, if your mind is centered in need, you are thinking from absence, and that is what you will believe. But if you turn inward to God and declare with spiritual authority that all is fulfilled, then the law begins to operate from cause, not effect. Christ did not think about what he hoped to achieve. He thought from the fulfillment already accomplished. He did not say, "I hope there is bread." He said, "I thank you, Father, for you always hear me." That anticipatory gratitude was not an emotional act. It was a mental act, based on certainty in the law. Creative thought begins with that certainty. It does not beg, it declares, it does not wait, it knows, and in knowing it manifests. This is not poetry or theology, it is a mental law as precise as gravity. If you think from truth, truth is revealed. If you think from illusion, illusion persists. Creative thought is not born of human urgency. It arises from divine silence. It cannot be forced, but it can be allowed. That is why anyone who wants to think like Christ must first learn to not think like man. This is the cross Jesus spoke of, the surrender of the self, not as punishment, but as liberation. The lower self wants to control, to plan, to protect itself. The mind of Christ needs none of that. It knows everything is contained in the principle. It knows good is inevitable, that God's will is absolute good. It knows fear is an illusion, time is a mental construct, lack is a misperception, and in knowing, it dissolves them. Do you want to think like Christ? Start by examining your thoughts. From where are you thinking? From doubt or from certainty? From appearances or from cause? From habit or from principle? Every thought you keep active is a prayer. What are you truly praying? Are you affirming the presence of God or repeating the absence of all? The mind of Christ is not something to conquer. It is something to recognize. It is already in you, already working, already knocking on your inner door. But it cannot enter if the house is occupied by borrowed thoughts, inherited fears, false beliefs. Empty your mind. Give no space to fear. Do not tolerate a thought you couldn't stand before the living Christ, because every thought, repeated with faith, becomes flesh. At the core, all human suffering comes from thinking with the wrong mind, and all true healing consists in thinking with the right one. To think like Christ is to stop fighting and start creating. It is to stop begging and start declaring. It is to stop waiting and start being. Creative thought does not ask if it can, it knows it is. Let there be light, said God. He did not say, let there be light if possible. He said, let there be. That is how Christ thinks in you. That is how you must begin to think. And how do you begin? Observe, be still, affirm, and repeat in the silence of your mind. I have the mind of Christ. My thought is divine creation in action. Truth guides me. Law supports me. I lack nothing because I think from cause, and then act as if it were already true, because it is. Chapter 2. Spiritual Thinking, the Renunciation of Carnal Judgments. The first step toward spiritual thinking is to abandon judgment according to the flesh. One cannot think like Christ while insisting on seeing the world through the eyes of the body, evaluating through the senses and drawing conclusions from human logic. The spiritual mind does not interpret external events as definitive truths. It recognizes them as shadows cast by thought. That is why Jesus taught, do not judge by appearances, but judge with right judgment. John 7:24. This right judgment is not moral analysis. It is metaphysical discernment. It is the ability to see the origin of the form in the thought that caused it. The judgment of the flesh relies on what is visible, audible, and tangible. It sees illness and declares, I am sick. It sees an empty bank account and says, I am poor. It sees an offense and cries, I have been hurt. All of these judgments are false. They are closed sentences based on a limited and partial vision. None of them consider the principle. They are rooted in illusion. When a man says he is defeated because his business failed, he is passing a carnal judgment. He is declaring his condition based on the effect, not on the cause. That judgment becomes a mental chain. Every time he repeats that idea, he ingrains it deeper into his subconscious, making escape seem harder. To think spiritually is to see beyond form. It is not to deny the external experience, but to deny its authority, to say, this is how it appears, but this is not the truth, and then to affirm the truth until the appearance gives way. This is not self-deception. It is fidelity to the law, for what is held in mind with persistence inevitably becomes manifest in experience. The spiritual mind is not seduced by the world's drama. It knows that every situation can change if the thought that sustains it changes. For this reason, spiritual thinking does not dwell on the problem, but on the solution. And the solution is always mental. Renouncing carnal judgment is not easy at first, for the habit of judgment runs deep. Since childhood, we have been trained to evaluate what is visible. That's good, that's bad, that's dangerous, that's ugly, that's unfair. But all such judgments are arbitrary. They are based on human values, changing, circumstantial, and unstable. God does not see this way. The mind of Christ does not see this way. The Christ within does not say that is wrong. It says that is in the process of perfection. It does not say this is failure. It says this is a lesson on the way to good. The spiritual mind redeems every appearance because it does not judge, it transforms. To begin this shift in vision, the student must practice constant inner vigilance. Each time a judgment is made, the question must arise. From where am I thinking this? From the flesh or from the spirit? From fear or from principle? This observation is a training, and if maintained with honesty, it begins to open a new mental channel. one that does not react to facts, but affirms truth from cause. This is the channel through which the mind of Christ can express itself. A simple example may help. Imagine you lose your job. The carnal mind will say, "I'm in crisis." The spiritual mind will say, "God has something greater for me." This apparent loss is a release for a higher good already unfolding. And it is not said as mere comfort. It is said because it is known that the law is exact, that nothing is lost where divine purpose reigns, and that every void precedes a greater fullness, if thought allows it. This is how we renounce carnal judgment, by changing the internal interpretation, not waiting for the external form to change. Another example. Someone insults you. The carnal mind says, "They offended me, hurt me, disrespected me." The spiritual mind says, "This is an opportunity to affirm my spiritual invulnerability. I am not what that person says. I am what God says I am." And then it affirms silently, "I am the expression of God's love. No human word can disturb my peace." In doing so, it cuts off the mental cycle of conflict, releases the poison of emotion, thinks spiritually, and lifts the vibration of the environment. Spiritual thinking is thinking from reality, not from appearance. Appearance changes. Truth does not. The body gets sick and heals. Relationships rise and fall. Money comes and goes. But the Christ in you remains unchanging, perfect, whole. Spiritual thinking is returning to that invisible foundation and affirming from there. This is why it is so vital to know God's attributes and affirm them constantly. What you think about God becomes your law of life. If you think God is distant, you will live in separation. If you think God is punishment, you will live in fear. But if you think God is love, truth, wisdom, order, and provision, then you will begin to live those qualities. The spiritual mind does not fight evil. It dissolves it because it knows evil has no substance of its own. It is merely the absence of understanding. And where there is light, shadow disappears. That is why Jesus never debated with error. He simply replaced it. To the sick, he did not explain the cause of their illness. He said, "Rise." To the sinner, he did not list their faults. He said, "Go and sin no more." In other words, stop thinking that way. Think as the child of God that you are. That shift in thought was the healing. That same shift is what you must now practice. In conclusion, spiritual thinking is not better thinking. It is thinking from a different level, from a different identity. It is not about correcting the old mind, but replacing it. It is to stop interpreting facts through pain, guilt, or fear, and begin to see them as opportunities for learning, expression, and redemption. It is to live from the certainty that all has purpose, that all is connected, and that nothing can be lacking where God is present. For this to occur, you must watch your thoughts like a faithful sentinel. Every time an old idea tries to take control, a complaint, a judgment, a fear, a resentment, replace it with a spiritual truth. Do not fight it, replace it, do not condemn it, reaffirm, do not resist. Accept the truth and it will set you free. And remember, every time you choose to think spiritually, the mind of Christ is activated in you. Chapter 3. The I Am Consciousness of Divine Sonship. Everything man needs to attain fullness is already within him, but not in the form of things, rather in the form of consciousness. There is nothing to search for outside, nothing to acquire. One must simply awaken to what already is. At the center of your being lives an unchanging, perfect, eternal presence. That presence is none other than the inner Christ, the Son of God within you. And its highest mental expression is the affirmation, I am. Understanding this, not as a theory, but as an operative truth, marks the true beginning of your spiritual transformation. When Moses asked God his name, the answer was, I am that I am. Exodus 3:14. He didn't say, I was, or I will be. He declared the I am, eternal presence, pure reality, divine identity beyond condition or time. When you say I am, you are not merely naming yourself, you are invoking your spiritual nature. Every time you say I am, you are decreeing your being. You are affirming a reality your subconscious accepts as a command. That's why it is vital to pay close attention to what you place after those words. If you say I am weak, you are decreeing weakness. If you say I am poor, you are activating poverty. If you say I am unworthy, you are setting a barrier against grace. But if you say I am one with God, then you are aligning your mind with the mind of Christ. And that is true prayer. The I am is the key to divine sonship. You are not a human being trying to reach God. You are a spiritual being expressing through human form. The difference is profound. If you think of yourself as a separate creature, you will live in struggle. If you think as a son, you will live in dominion. The son does not beg, he declares. He does not fear, he trusts. He does not plead, because all power is already within him, since all power comes from the Father, and the Father and the Son are one. This is not an idea to repeat mechanically. It is a consciousness to be embraced with authority. When you say I am, remember you are naming the principle. It is not a psychological label. It is a metaphysical declaration. You are proclaiming your identity beyond personal history. That is why Christ said, "Before Abraham was, I am." John 8:58. He was not speaking of the man Jesus, but of the eternal Christ within him. That same presence is within you, and you can affirm it in every situation, every thought, every moment of doubt. If you are sick, say, I am the health of God in manifestation. If you are anxious, say, I am the peace that surpasses all understanding. If you lack anything, say, I am the unlimited provision of the Father. It does not matter how you feel. What matters is what you recognize as truth. This is where many students stumble. They say, but I don't feel that way, and they wait to feel it before they affirm it. That is a mistake. The order is reversed. First you affirm it, then you feel it, because feeling follows sustained thought. If you wait to feel worthy before saying, I am a child of God, you may never say it. But if you say it, even if the emotion is absent at first, you will eventually feel it. Because the subconscious accepts every idea repeated with consistency, and what it accepts, it manifests. The consciousness of sonship is not arrogance, it is spiritual obedience. To deny your divine inheritance is to deny the Father who gave it to you. Does the son of a king honor his father by saying, I am an unworthy beggar? No, he honors him by occupying his rightful place in the kingdom. You do not honor God by diminishing yourself. You honor him by manifesting his image and likeness, and you do this by embracing, with unwavering faith, that you are what God says you are, even if the world, your past or your senses say otherwise. Many fear using I am, thinking it an act of pride, but true pride is declaring any identity other than the one God gave you. The false self, built by the ego, says, I am unworthy, I am weak, I can't. The true I am says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Philippians 4:13. Do you see the difference? It is not the personal self being exalted, but the spiritual self being recognized. The consciousness of sonship does not separate you from others, it unites you. Because it reminds you that the same principle lives in everyone, expressing in many forms. In practice, whenever you face conflict, pause and affirm and I am aligned with truth. For example, if you feel afraid, do not fight the fear. Simply affirm with calm and strength, I am the strength of God. And if you doubt your worth, don't seek external validation. Say, I am the perfect expression of divine wisdom. Do this as a mental act of faith, not an emotional crutch. The power is not in the emotion. It is in the truth, upheld with perseverance. You must understand, I am is not a magic formula. It does not work through automatic repetition. It works through consciousness. The deeper your understanding of what you affirm, the sooner you will see it manifest. It's not enough to say, I am health. You must know without a shadow of doubt that health is already in you as a perfect idea, waiting for your acceptance. It's not enough to say, I am abundance. You must live in the certainty that all you need flows from the source, and that source never fails. The consciousness of sonship does not eliminate challenges, but it transforms your relationship with them. You no longer see them as punishments, but as opportunities. You no longer ask, "Why me?" Instead, you affirm, "I am the Christ within this experience, and from this place I declare the truth." That is true faith, not asking for the problem to disappear, but knowing that the Christ in you has already overcome it. To think this way is to think from above. It is to lift the mind to the place where all is resolved. I am is the affirmation of unity, and where there is unity, there can be no lack, no fear, no error. The Christ in you has never forgotten who you are. His only task is to remind you, and his only tool is affirmative thought. When you affirm I am, the veil begins to tear, and as Paul declared, you behold the glory of the Lord with unveiled face. There is no other real identity but I am. All else is fleeting shadow, and the more you live from this consciousness, the more quickly you will see its power at work in your life. So declare now with full authority, I am the Son of God. I am the perfect expression of divine love, wisdom, and power. I am one with the principle, I am truth in action, and then act as one who knows it, because that is exactly what you are. Chapter 4, the mastery of thought, mental law, and affirmative prayer. Every human experience is the result of a thought held with faith. This is a law, and like all spiritual laws, it does not depend on religious beliefs or emotional states. It works always, without exception, without favoritism. It does not require devotion, only application. It is not about convincing God, but aligning the mind with truth, because the mind, once firmly focused on an idea, projects it into form. What you think manifests. And if you persist in thinking from the principle will become flesh in your life. But it is not enough to know this law. It must be mastered. And mastering thought is the most demanding task of spiritual development. Most people believe they are thinking, but in reality, they are merely repeating borrowed ideas. They react to stimuli, spin in mental circles without direction or purpose. True thinking begins when one deliberately chooses which idea to hold in the mind and sustains it, without distraction, without doubt, without haste. Then the law begins to act. The mastery of thought requires discipline. It is not achieved in days. It is a daily, constant, unyielding practice. One must observe every thought like a gardener watches a garden. If you see a fearful idea, you uproot it. If you detect a statement of lack, you replace it. If a doubt appears, you dissolve it with truth. You don't fight these thoughts. You recognize them as illusions and replace them with eternal principles. That is working with the law, not against it. And how is a new idea established in the mind? Through affirmative prayer. Prayer is not a request to an external will. It is an internal declaration of a spiritual truth. It is not about speaking to God as if he were far away, but speaking from God as a conscious channel of his action. Affirmative prayer does not beg, it affirms. It does not plead, it decrees. It does not describe the problem, it declares the solution. That is why Jesus said, "When you pray, believe that you have already received it." Mark 11:24. That is the key. Think as if it already is. Feel as if it is already fulfilled. Act from fulfillment, not from waiting. Affirmative prayer has a clear structure. First, recognize God as total presence. Then, affirm the truth about the situation. Next, declare the manifestation as complete. Finally, give thanks. There is no room for complaint, pleading, or dramatization. Affirmative prayer is an act of spiritual authority. It is the Christ in you speaking with full awareness of the law. When you pray in this way, no opposing force can prevail. The mind aligns, the subconscious obeys, and form follows. This kind of prayer must be repeated until the mind accepts it as truth. It is not about quantity, but clarity of focus. You can repeat an affirmation hundreds of times without result if done in doubt. But if once you declare it with full faith, with invulnerable certainty, the manifestation becomes inevitable. That is why Jesus said, "It shall be done to you according to your faith." Matthew 9:29. Not according to emotion, not according to desperation, but according to your inner certainty. It is therefore crucial to train the mind to hold right thoughts. This means eliminating all forms of negative thinking. You cannot think health and accept images of sickness. You cannot affirm prosperity and speak of lack. You cannot declare peace and allow yourself to criticize. Every thought carries vibration. Every word takes form. What you think and speak consistently becomes your mental atmosphere, and that atmosphere generates your experiences. To master thought, you must accept that everything you think matters. Everything you hold becomes law for you. And what do you do when the mind spins out of control? When negative thoughts seem stronger, do not fight, do not resist. Simply recenter, reaffirm, declare the truth again. Each time you do, you are training your mind. You are reprogramming the subconscious. You are establishing a new mental identity. And the day will come when your mind will automatically react with Christ's thoughts. Not because you force it, but because they have become one with you. The mastery of thought is not repression, it is direction. It is not control in the human sense. It is spiritual authority. You are not your thoughts. You are the one who thinks. Therefore, you can choose what to think. That is your freedom, and that freedom, faithfully exercised, is your salvation. Do not say, I'm trying. Say, I am declaring. Do not say, I hope it happens. Say, it is happening. Do not say, I wish I could. Say, I already can, because Christ thinks in me, feels in me, acts in me. Every affirmative prayer is a ray of light in your mind, and where there is light, there can be no shadow. Exercise, active meditation, Christ thinks, feels, and acts in me. This exercise is designed to consciously install the mind of Christ in your daily life. It is not about relaxation, but about establishing mental authority. Practice it every morning before beginning your activities. It requires between 5 to 10 minutes. Consistency is more important than duration. Sit upright with a straight back in a quiet place. Do not cross your arms or legs. Gently close your eyes. Breathe deeply 3 times. As you inhale, mentally say, God is here. As you exhale, say, all is in order. This establishes presence. Declare softly or mentally, Christ in me thinks, feels, and acts. I am not a separate mind. I am not a personal will. I am a channel of divine thought. I am the expression of infinite wisdom. I am the instrument of God's will. Repeat it slowly 3 times. Visualize your mind as a clear sky without clouds. Each thought of Christ is a star shining in that sky. Let these ideas settle effortlessly. If a negative thought appears, do not fight it. Let it pass. Return to your affirmation, Christ in me thinks, feels, and acts. For 1 minute, affirm with rhythmic breathing, I am health, I am peace, I am provision, I am wisdom, I am love. Say it with full attention, without hurry, as if each word were a sacred seed. End with gratitude. Thank you, God, because it is already done. Thank you because your thought is now my thought. Thank you because the Christ in me is my only guide. Open your eyes. Remain in silence for a few moments. Then go about your day knowing it is not you who thinks, it is Christ who thinks in you. Stay alert, and whenever an undesirable thought arises, answer it with the affirmation, Christ in me thinks, feels, and acts. Repeat this exercise daily for 21 days. In doing so, you are retraining your mind to live from the principle. Chapter 5. The Christ Vision, How to See the World Without Yielding to Fear. The human mind, in its natural state, interprets reality through the lens of fear. It observes what happens and draws conclusions that almost always include some degree of threat, loss, or conflict. This kind of vision blinds us to the truth. It sees, but it does not discern. It perceives events, but fails to understand their deeper causes. That is why the teachings of Jesus did not begin with action, but with sight. If your eye is single, your whole body will be full of light. Matthew 6:22. Seeing clearly is the beginning of all spiritual transformation, and this is only possible through Christ vision. What does it mean to see with Christ vision? It is to see the world as God sees it. It is to look beyond form, beyond circumstances, beyond judgment. It is to behold the presence of good, even when appearances deny it. It is to keep your eye focused on the cause and not the effect. It is not about denying what happens, but interpreting it from a different level. Not from the fearful mind, but from the mind of Christ. Only from this place can the soul rest amid chaos, be healed amid pain, and move forward amid uncertainty. Fear arises when we lose our connection to the principle. Fear is, in essence, a belief in separation. It is the thought that something or someone outside the will of God can harm you, and that is impossible. Nothing can touch the child of God unless he accepts it in his mind. That is why Jesus said, "Do not be afraid," not as mere comfort, but as a mental instruction. For fear paralyzes creative thought, weakens prayer, and distorts perception. And every distorted perception creates a chain of errors. To think with fear is to sow disorder. To see with fear is to multiply the mistake. To look at the world without yielding to fear, you must change the place from which you look. You cannot continue to observe events with the same mental filters you used before awakening. Christ vision demands lifting the mind above what is visible. It requires training the mind to see hidden good, the order behind apparent chaos, the truth behind appearance. This is true vision, to see as God sees, to see as the Christ in you sees, and this requires practice, faithfulness, and resolve. Imagine Jesus before a leper. Any other person would have seen decay, despair, contagion. He saw purity, perfection, latent health. He did not deny the leprosy, but he gave it no authority. He looked beyond it. He saw the man as a child of God, and by holding that vision, form was transformed. That is how Christ vision works. It does not force, argue, or explain. It simply stands firm in truth until illusion dissolves for lack of substance. You can do the same in your life. You can look at a situation of conflict and say, "This is not the truth. This is an appearance rooted in fear. I do not yield to it. I see peace where others see struggle. I see unity where others see division. I see Christ in every person involved." And by doing so, you begin to shift the frequency of thought. The mind rises, and the situation, without knowing how, begins to reorder itself. Where there is clear vision, the law acts. At first, this may seem illogical. How can you say all is well when clearly it is not? How can you declare health when the body aches? How can you affirm abundance when the bank account is empty? The answer is, because that is what Christ would do, and you are called to think as he did, not to deny what you see, but to elevate it, not to escape reality, but to transform it. For every external situation is only a projection of a sustained idea. Change the idea, and the outer will adjust. The practice consists in observing without reacting, in seeing with intention, not with impulse, in not taking as final what changes, but anchoring the mind in what remains. Christ vision does not get caught up in news, rumors, statistics, or appearances. It is not carried away by collective emotions or fear-filled discourse. It remains in peace, not because it ignores the world, but because it knows that the kingdom of God is prior, superior, and more real than any temporary phenomenon. When faced with a challenging situation, stop, make inner silence, breathe, and say mentally, "Christ in me sees the truth. I do not yield to illusion. I see God's good in action, here and now." Do it calmly, do it with intention, don't try to feel anything, just affirm, for the feeling will follow right thinking. One of the most destructive habits of the human mind is negative anticipation. The mind imagines future scenarios filled with fear and then acts as if they were real. This is the exact opposite of Christ vision. Christ does not anticipate evil, he anticipates the glory of God. He does not await problems, he awaits revelation. He does not fear what may come, he gives thanks for what already is. So if you want to think like Christ, you must break the mental habit of worry. Replace it with affirmations of trust. Each time your mind drifts toward doubt, say silently, "God governs this situation. There is nothing to fear," and return to your peace. Fear is the great illusion. It has no power of its own. It lives off the thought that feeds it. When you stop thinking it, it dies. That is why the work is not to fight fear, but to stop sustaining it. Christ's vision does not fight fear, it simply ignores it. It focuses on truth and affirms it until it becomes visible. That is the function of the single eye Jesus spoke of. Do not merely look, see only God. To cultivate this vision, it is helpful to repeat each morning the following affirmation. Today I see with the eyes of Christ. My vision is clear, my judgment is right. My mind is at peace. I see only good, for good is the only reality. Say it upon waking. Repeat it at midday, repeat it at dusk. And when something confuses you, do not judge, observe, wait, affirm, and trust that you will see. For to see as Christ sees is to see from the kingdom, and one who sees from the kingdom does not fear, because they know that all is well, even if it has not yet appeared that way. Chapter 6. Forgiving from the inner Christ. Deep mental transformation. To forgive is not to forget. It is not to justify. It is not to reconcile with the one who hurt you, nor to deny the pain you experienced. All of that belongs to the emotional realm. The forgiveness that transforms life is not a sentimental act, but a deep mental operation. It is the conscious dissolution of an erroneous thought lodged in your mind. Because what hurts you is not what someone did, but what you believed about it. True forgiveness does not change the past. It changes your mind about the past, and in doing so, it sets you free. Jesus taught forgiveness as a mental law, not a moral virtue. He said, "Forgive 70 times 7, not as a literal number, but as an infinite measure. Because forgiveness is not a one-time act, it is a mental state. It is not granted once, it is maintained always. Every thought of resentment, no matter how justified it seems, is a mental shackle. Every judgment held against another becomes a sentence upon yourself. For the mind is one. What you think of others, your subconscious applies to you. And so by forgiving, you do not release the other, you release yourself. The key is to understand that no one can truly hurt you. They can only activate within you a belief you already held. Someone humiliates you, and you feel pain. But the pain does not come from their words. It comes from the internal belief that you could be less than others. That idea was already there. They merely triggered it. Therefore the work is not with the other. It is with you. It is not to change the world, but to change your interpretation of it. And that is what the inner Christ does. He does not defend you from attack. He reveals that you were never attacked. To forgive from the inner Christ means to look upon the other as God sees them, beyond their error. It means to declare mentally, what this person did does not change who they are, and it does not change who I am. You do not do this to protect yourself, you do it to reconnect with truth. Because every judgment you hold separates you from Christ's vision. And as long as you see others as guilty, you cannot see yourself as a child of God. A divided mind cannot pray with power. That is why Jesus linked forgiveness with prayer. Forgive us, as we forgive others. The prayer only operates in a mind clean of judgment. But what about the wound, the pain that feels so real? Do not fight it. Observe it. Acknowledge it. And then take that thought to the Christ within. Silently affirm, this thought does not come from God. I give it to the light. The Christ in me dissolves it now. And then declare the opposite. If you believe you were rejected, affirm, I am the full acceptance of God. If you believe you were betrayed, affirm, I am divine faithfulness in every relationship. If you felt ignored, say, I am the perfect expression of love that never forgets. This is how the mind heals, not by repeating the pain, but by replacing it with truth. This work is not superficial. It reaches the subconscious, where ancient memories, hidden grudges, and inherited ideas reside. True forgiveness clears that mental soil, and as a result, your external life begins to shift. Strained relationships soften. Blocked situations unblock. Your health improves. Prosperity flows, because you've released judgment. You've freed the energy trapped in attack thoughts. You've left the prison of the ego. Some may say, I forgive, but I don't forget. That is not forgiveness. That is storing judgment under a different name. Christ does not remember the error because he never accepted it as real. Forgiveness is saying this was never true in the kingdom of God, and if it wasn't true there, it has no power over me. This act of consciousness, repeated sincerely, begins to purify your mind. And when the mind is clean, all things are made new. You may need to forgive great things, real injustices, deep pains, but you are not alone. The Christ within you already knows how to do it. You only need to be willing. Forgiveness is not your skill. It is a quality of the Christ. You just have to let it express. And it all begins with a decision to let go of judgment, not because the other deserves it, but because you deserve to be free. Remember, every time you judge, you make something real. Every time you forgive, you restore unity. And where there is unity, the law operates without resistance. Where there is forgiveness, there is peace, and where there is peace, there is power. Make forgiveness a daily practice. Do not wait for conflict. Forgive in advance. Declare every morning, "Today I will judge no one. Today I will see through the eyes of Christ. Today I release every mind, every memory, every emotion that ties me to the past. Today I am free because I have forgiven." And so, little by little, your mind becomes transparent, and Christ shines through it. Exercise 2. Decree for dissolving judgments and subconscious release. This exercise is a practical tool to cleanse judgmental thoughts and release old memories of resentment held in the subconscious. Repeat for 14 consecutive days, preferably before sleeping. This is not about feeling, it is about affirming with intention. If there is someone specific you need to forgive, bring them to mind at the beginning. But do not dwell on the details. Just anchor yourself in the truth. Initial silence. Sit quietly. Take 3 deep breaths. Close your eyes. Say silently, "This is an act of spiritual freedom I am willing to forgive." General declaration. Repeat slowly, "I release all judgment. I release all resentment. I release every idea of attack or defense. I set every being free from my mistaken thoughts. I free my mind from all memories of pain. The truth makes me free." Central decree. Repeat with inner strength, "I am the light of Christ. In me there is no shadow. I am the peace of God. In me there is no conflict. I am living forgiveness. In me there is no past. Only truth remains. Only love remains. Only God is." Closing affirmation. Thank you, Father, for this judgment has been dissolved. Thank you for my mind has been restored. Thank you for peace is already mine. All is well. It is done. Remain in silence for a moment longer. Feel the calm as a sign you've let go. Then open your eyes and continue your day or rest, knowing something deep has been cleansed. Repeat this exercise whenever a judgmental thought disturbs you. Do it with intention, because every judgment you dissolve is one step closer to your Christ. Chapter 7. True individuality, manifesting the divine idea. One of the most persistent confusions along the spiritual path is believing that individuality is the same as personality. This misunderstanding causes many errors in thinking. The student believes they must deny themselves, as Jesus said, and they interpret this as having to erase their identity, relinquish their value, and diminish their existence. Nothing could be further from the truth. What must be denied is not your true individuality, but the false personality. It is not about erasing the self, but revealing it. Self-denial, in the language of Christ, is not self-annihilation. It is disidentification from error. True individuality is your unique, unrepeatable, perfect spiritual nature. It is the divine idea God had when He thought of you. It is your essential blueprint in spirit, beyond your history, your emotions, your apparent limitations. You are not your character, your temperament, your successes or failures. You are a conscious manifestation of the mind of God. You are a spark of that infinite light, expressed with a clear purpose, a unique design, and an eternal meaning. True individuality is not invented. It is discovered. It is not built. It is revealed. This divine idea is not abstract. It is a precise plan of expression, of function, of fulfillment. God does not create repetitions. Every human being embodies an exact combination of divine attributes. You are designed to express something that no one else can express. And when you do, The universe aligns around you. There is no competition in the kingdom of God. There is no comparison. Each one fulfills their function like a cell in the perfect body. The problem arises when man forgets who he is and starts copying, pretending, adjusting to foreign patterns. Then he loses his power because imitated personality has no spiritual substance. Only true individuality carries metaphysical authority. Personality is a mask built by the ego. It is formed from other people's opinions, unhealed wounds, unexamined desires. It is reactive, shifting, insecure. It seeks external validation. It needs approval. It depends on applause, recognition, status. All of that is false. All of that is temporary. When you think from personality, you are separated from your source. When you think from your individuality, you are aligned with principle. That is why the spiritual process is not about growing as a person, but awakening as a divine idea. Jesus did not define himself by his external conditions. He was born poor, lived without possessions, was rejected by the authorities. Yet he declared with absolute certainty, "The Father and I are one." John 10:30. That affirmation was not based on circumstances. It came from his awareness of origin. He knew he was not just a carpenter with spiritual talent. He knew he was the living manifestation of the Christ. And because of that, he worked miracles. Because when the divine idea is recognized, it activates the law, and the law obeys without resistance. Your function as an advanced student is to discover that divine idea in you. How does it manifest? Through your gifts, your inclinations, your deepest joys. What you do with selfless love, with joy, with natural excellence. This is the sign of your spiritual design. The divine idea does not produce exhaustion, it brings expansion. It does not cause struggle, it gives expression. When you are aligned with your true function, the universe cooperates, doors open, energy flows, prayer becomes a natural affirmation, life responds. It is important to understand there is no contradiction between the spiritual unity of all beings and the unique individuality of each one. Just as every sunbeam is part of the same sun but shines in a different direction and form, your individuality is a specific channel of the divine mind. It does not make you better or worse than others, only different in expression but equal in essence. And that balance is key. The most common error is to compare, to measure, to imitate. But you did not come to duplicate what others do. You came to manifest what only you can manifest. Christ thought does not deny individuality, it consecrates it. The Christ within you does not erase your identity, it reveals it in its purest form. That is why, when you think like Christ, you begin to accept who you are, without excuses, without disguises, without fear. You do not justify yourself. You do not hide. You do not overact. You simply live from your center. And that center is truth. It is power. It is peace. The divine idea in you does not impose itself from the outside. It is revealed from within. It does not come as a command, but as inspiration. That is why you must learn to listen, to be still, to let it emerge. While your mind is full of other people's desires, worldly concerns, external opinions, you will not hear the voice of the Christ. But if you cultivate inner silence, if you empty yourself of human expectations, then that voice will become clear, and with it direction, and with direction order. When you manifest your divine idea, your life gains meaning. Your days are filled with purpose. You no longer act out of obligation, necessity, or approval. You act from the impulse of principle within you, and you do it well. Because the law supports all true expression. The law upholds every genuine function. The law blesses all that is born of spirit. It may be that at first you do not see your divine idea clearly. That's okay. Begin by affirming that it exists, that it is already within you, that you are willing to manifest it. Declare each day, I am the expression of a perfect divine idea. The Christ in me is manifesting now. Everything in my life cooperates with my spiritual purpose. Then observe, attend to your recurring thoughts, your pure desires, your creative impulses, and act, because the idea is revealed through action, not through waiting. The error is to think spirituality means retreating from the world. True spirituality is expressing yourself in the world from your divine center, not to impose, but to illuminate, not to convince, but to live in coherence with your truth. And when you do, you need no defense. For one who manifests their divine idea walks with invisible authority, and the world recognizes it, even if it doesn't understand why. So renounce the false ideas the ego has built about you. You are not shy, clumsy, fragile, or inadequate. Those are memories of the past, not descriptions of the soul. You are what God thought when He thought of you. And that thought is perfect, it is eternal, it is blessed. From today on, stop asking, "Who am I to do this?" and begin declaring, "I am sent by the divine mind to joyfully fulfill my unique expression. My function is sacred. My individuality is the living imprint of God on earth." Then live as someone who believes it, for that faith is what activates the idea. Chapter 8. Error is illusion, deprogramming the thought of the world. One of the great pillars of Christic thought is the understanding that evil is not real in itself. It has no substance, no divine origin, no true cause. Therefore, it is an illusion. This does not mean it cannot be experienced or that it does not hurt. It means it does not belong to the spiritual order. It holds no legitimacy in the kingdom of God and can thus be dissolved through the understanding of truth. Most human beings live under the hypnosis of worldly thought. From birth, they are trained to see evil as a real force, pain as a natural experience, conflict as inevitable, lack as a possibility, and failure as destiny. These beliefs, passed down generation after generation, have created a collective mental field in which error appears as obvious as the ground beneath our feet. But this does not make it true, only shared. Christ came to break this hypnosis, not through dogma, but through demonstration. Where others saw disease, He declared health. Where they saw death, He affirmed life. Where they saw sin, He saw ignorance. He did not condemn, He corrected. He did not accuse, He taught. For He knew that what the world calls reality is but a cluster of crystallized thoughts, and where there is thought, there can be change. This is why Jesus said, "You shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." John 8:32. He did not say emotion, penance, or suffering would set you free. He said knowledge of the truth, and that knowledge is mental. It is consciousness. Deprogramming the thought of the world is deep work. It means unlearning what was taught as sacred, questioning what seemed unquestionable, renouncing every idea that cannot stand in the light of principle. It is not about rejecting humanity, but liberating it from within. Every experience of error, disease, poverty, conflict, hatred, has its root in a false thought, and no error can survive in a mind trained in truth. A false thought is a belief that does not reflect the perception of God. I can't. There's not enough. I'm not worthy. There's no way out. This is bigger than me. All of these are metaphysical lies, and yet they dominate the subconscious of millions, implanted through repetition, culture, and identification with experience. How are they removed? In the same way, through repetition, affirmation, and new identification with truth. Metaphysical treatment is the most effective tool for this reprogramming. It is not about thinking positively. It is about thinking rightly, thinking from principle, thinking from the mind of Christ. Treatment does not argue with error. It does not analyze or justify it. It replaces it, undoes it, through firm, consistent, unwavering affirmation. Just as a beam of light effortlessly dissolves darkness, truth held steadfastly dissolves error without struggle. It is essential to understand that the thought of the world does not present itself as evil. It presents as common sense, as prudence, as experience. At a certain age, the body declines. Money is earned with effort. Not everyone is lucky. Diseases are inherited. These phrases, passively accepted, become laws in the mind, and the mind, being creative by nature, obeys them and manifests them. That is why to live spiritually is to examine every idea we've accepted without thinking. The Christ within accepts no limitation, acknowledges no obstacles, yields to no circumstance, because he sees from cause. And where cause is, there is solution. The world will see impossibilities, Christ sees possibilities. The world will see death, Christ sees life. This vision does not depend on logic, but on trained mental faith. To think like Christ is not a luxury, it is a necessity. Only from that place can you be truly free of error. Every metaphysical student must take full responsibility for cleansing their mind. No one else can do it. It is not enough to attend talks, read books, or repeat formulas. One must work within, day by day, dismantling false concepts and affirming truth. Not by forceful will, but by serene surrender to the light of Christ. A clean mind does not fear, does not doubt, does not fall into discouragement. It is unimpressed by appearances, because it knows that every fact is merely an effect, and effect always obeys cause. And cause is mental. Therefore, whoever masters their thought masters their experience. And never forget, error has no existence of its own. It only lives in the mind that feeds it. When you stop thinking it, it vanishes. Not because something changed outside, but because healing happened within. That is true healing, and that is the work of the Christ in you, to teach you to think from the kingdom, not from the world. Exercise 3. Metaphysical treatment to dissolve false beliefs. This treatment is a tool for breaking mental structures that have been inherited, repeated, or imposed by experience. It is not about fighting these beliefs, but replacing them with affirmations of truth. Do it each morning for 21 days. Do it with determination, not urgency. You don't need to understand every word. Just hold the idea with faith. Before beginning, take a brief pause of silence and say, Christ in me now dissolves all illusion. Metaphysical treatment. I am the mind of God in expression. In me there is no error. In me there is no doubt. In me there is no past. Only truth is real. Only good is possible. Only love is eternal. No false belief can remain in my mind. Every idea of lack, of sickness, of separation, of impossibility is now dissolved in the light of Christ. I was not born to suffer. I am not limited by experience. I do not accept the thought of the world. I am free. I am whole. I am one with the source. Every cell in my body responds to truth. Every situation in my life aligns with divine order. Every relationship is purified. Every thought is sanctified. I now declare my mental freedom. All conditioning vanishes. All erroneous programming is replaced by the wisdom of God. I am right thought in action. My faith is strong. My vision is clear. My soul is free. I am what God says I am, and I manifest truth. I dissolve illusion, and I am. Thank you, Father, for this is already reality. Thank you for truth is operating in me now. Thank you for the Christ in me governs all my experience. It is done. Chapter 9, Obeying God from Within. Intuition and Inner Silence. The most common mistake among those beginning their spiritual awakening is to believe that obeying God means following external rules, adhering to moral codes, or imitating religious behaviors. This is an outdated view, inherited from a primitive understanding of the principle. But God does not need to be obeyed like a boss. God does not command from outside. God does not demand behaviors. God is not out there. God is within, and His will is not heard with the ears nor deduced by logic. It is perceived by the soul. It is sensed in silence, recognized through intuition. To obey God in its true sense is to follow the guidance of the Christ within. It is not about submission, but alignment. It is not about compliance out of fear, but living inspired. The Christ in you does not give orders. He offers paths. He does not impose mandates. He reveals directions. And you know this because every time you quiet your mind, every time you stop arguing with life, every time you surrender without resistance to what is, you hear that voice, not in words but in certainty, not in sounds but in peace. The problem is that the noise of the world, and especially the noise of your own thoughts, drowns out that voice. The ego wants to control, to decide, to know before acting. But the Christ operates through faith. And faith is not ignorance. It is inner certainty without needing proof. When you obey the Christ within, you do not always know why you do what you do, but you know it is right. You can't explain it, but you can feel that everything fits. There is peace, and peace is the seal of divine will. There is no way to live spiritually without developing the art of inner silence. Silence is not the absence of sound. It is the absence of mental resistance. It is ceasing to think from fear, urgency, or ego. It is stopping interference from human ideas to allow spiritual ideas to arise. Jesus withdrew to the desert to pray. It was not an act of isolation, but an act of purification. There, without external noises, without demands, without crowds, he could clearly hear the Father's voice. That is your task, to retreat each day, even if only for a few minutes, to the desert of your soul and listen. Intuition is the spiritual faculty that allows you to receive directly the guidance of the principle. It does not need reasoning. It is not based on the past. It does not depend on human logic. It is direct, instantaneous, and precise. Every time you follow it, something within you becomes ordered. Every time you ignore it, something becomes complicated. Not because you are punished, but because you have stopped flowing with the cause. The principle is always guiding you, but it does not shout. It whispers. And those who live distracted cannot hear. Learning to obey from within requires trust. At first the mind doubts, asks if it is imagination or suggestion, but just begin to practice, and you will recognize that intuition has its own quality. There is no anxiety in it, no confusion. It is clear, serene. It does not propose harm. It does not create separation. It always invites an act of harmony, order, faith, and inner righteousness. Spiritual obedience is not passivity. It is active listening. It is not waiting for God to speak as one waits for an apparition. It is remaining available, receptive, attentive to the inner impulses coming from a mind that has learned to trust. And this is trained. It is strengthened with practice. Every time you act on your intuition, it becomes clearer. Every time you suppress it out of fear or convenience, it weakens, not because it goes out, but because your attention is diverted. To obey God from within is to live from refined intuition. Not every impulse is intuition. Hurry is not intuition. Compulsive need is not intuition. Disguised desire is not intuition. That is why silence is indispensable, because in silence everything becomes clear. The soul does not shout. It waits. The Christ in you does not push. He guides. And you will know you have obeyed correctly when what you do leaves you at peace, even if you don't fully understand it. Jesus did not act according to human expectations. When everyone expected him to speak, he was silent. When everyone expected him to retreat, he advanced. His guidance was not external. It did not come from logic, fear, or duty. It came from the Spirit. And that is why he could truly say, "I do nothing on my own, but speak just what the Father has taught me." John 5:19. This is spiritual obedience, acting not from pressure but from revelation. The modern world values quick action, immediate response, rational logic, but the kingdom of God operates in another time, another plane, another frequency. There, what matters is not how many things you do, but from where you do them. The essential is not meeting expectations, but manifesting higher order, and that order is only perceived when one lives from the center. Therefore, if you wish to obey God, begin by silencing the ego. You don't need complex rituals. You only need to be present, quiet internally. Listen with your heart, and trust that what arises will be right, even if it seems simple, even if it makes no sense to the world, because the Spirit guides with absolute precision. It makes no mistakes, repeats no formulas, only waits to be heard. Make silence a daily practice, not as an obligation, but as an encounter. Stop each day, even for 5 minutes, and say, "Father, I am here. Christ in me, guide me. I do not want to decide alone. I do not want to act from fear. Speak, Lord, your child listens. Then keep silent. Do not expect answers. Just wait in peace. The answer may come as a clear thought, a sensation, or a sudden certainty. But it will come because it is already within you. And when it arrives, obey. Do not question it, do not doubt it, do not compare it. Obey from faith, because that faith will be the bridge between your humanity and your truth. Chapter 10. Practical Christification, Thinking, Speaking, and Acting as the Living Christ. True spirituality is not an abstract ideal. It is not lofty contemplation without application. It is not a perfect doctrine without embodiment. True spirituality is lived, demonstrated, practiced. It is not enough to think about Christ. You must think like Christ. It is not enough to pray to Christ. You must let Christ pray in you, speak through you, act by your hand. This is practical Christification, the conscious process through which human thought, word, and action align with the divine mind. To think like Christ is to think from the principle, not from personal desire, not from fleeting emotion, not from limited logic. Christ-like thought is clear, direct, pure, impersonal. It does not judge, it does not react, it does not doubt, it affirms truth, declares goodness, upholds faith. Every thought that sustains peace, that frees, that elevates, that brings order, is Christ-like thought. Everything that confuses, divides, fears, or accuses is human thought in disguise. There is no middle ground. You either think from the kingdom or from the world. But thought, though fundamental, is not enough, because all thought seeks expression. The word is its first vehicle. That is why Jesus said, "Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks." Matthew 12:34. What you hold in mind becomes your word, and the word is law. Every word you utter with conviction becomes a decree, even if you are unaware of it. Therefore, to speak like Christ is to speak with watchfulness, power, and intention. It is not about adopting religious language. It is about using the word as a creative instrument, because it truly is. Christ did not speak for the sake of speaking. Every word of his was precise, a carrier of spirit, effective. He did not apologize for the truth, nor sugarcoat his teaching, nor wrap the message in sentimentality. He spoke with authority, and you, if you wish to live Christ-like, must learn to speak this way, not to impress, but to build, not to convince, but to declare. Speak only what builds up, speak only what blesses, speak only what represents the principle, because every spoken word becomes a mental seed, and sooner or later will bear fruit. But even the word is not enough if it is not backed by action. To act like Christ is the greatest challenge of advanced metaphysical thought, because it is no longer enough to know. You must embody. Christ-like action seeks no merit, no reward, no fame. It is simple, direct, generous, effective. It does not act to be seen. It acts because it is consistent with inner truth. If you think rightly and speak rightly, but your actions contradict your thought, the subconscious becomes confused, and a confused mind cannot fully manifest truth. To Christify yourself is to live from the center. It is to make each day an expression of the kingdom. You do not need to abandon your surroundings. You do not need to adopt special customs. You only need to be consistent. Let your thought, your word, and your action be on the same frequency. Let everything you are declare, "Christ lives in me," not as a mystical phrase, but as an operative law. When you achieve this inner coherence, everything in your life begins to align. Your relationships find order, your decisions become clear, your emotions find peace, not because everything outside is perfect, but because everything inside is in order. The Christ in you does not promise that there will be no challenges. It promises that through him, every challenge will become a path of transformation. It is crucial to begin each day from this awareness, because the world will try to drag you down to its level of thought. It will offer you fear, confusion, distraction. If you are not joined with Christ early on, your mind will scatter, and a scattered mind is fertile ground for error. That is why it is so necessary to establish a daily rite, not as superstition, not as an empty routine, but as an act of mental direction, spiritual governance, conscious decision. Practical Christification is not a state you reach once and for all. It is a renewed choice every day, every hour, every moment. It is not about arriving, but about remaining, remembering, affirming, sustaining. Christ is not a goal, it is a state of being, and that being expresses here and now in what you think, what you say, what you do. Remember, you are not trying to be a better person. You are allowing the Christ within you to express without obstruction. You are not trying to achieve something. You are remembering what you already are. The path is not forward, it is inward. There lies everything. There lies the kingdom. From today, make your life a constant expression of this truth. Do not wait for ideal conditions. Do not stop because of your emotions. Do not ask for guarantees. Simply affirm, Christ thinks in me, Christ speaks in me, Christ acts in me. I no longer live, Christ lives. And then live from there, each step, each decision, each moment. Exercise 4, Daily Rite of Christ-like Thought and Mental Command at Awakening. This exercise aims to establish, from the very first moment of the day, a mental atmosphere coherent with the mind of Christ. It is not a passive prayer. It is a vibrant decree, an act of authority. Do it upon waking before thinking about your tasks, preferably seated, with your back straight and in silence. 1. Declaration of presence. Softly or mentally say, this is a new day in the kingdom of God, and the Christ in me takes control of this day. No thought contrary to good will be accepted. 2. Activation of thought and rhythmic affirmations, each with a deep breath. I am the mind of Christ in full expression. My thought is clear, upright, firm, elevated. Today I think from love, act from truth, speak from peace. Repeat each affirmation 3 times with conviction. 3. Covenant with the principle. Say slowly, Father, do not let me stray from you today. Do not let me identify with fear, error, or illusion. I only want to live as your child. I only want to think as Christ. I only want to manifest your will, and it is already done. 4. Silence of integration. Hold 1 minute of silence and expect nothing. Simply be present. Breathe. Allow the mental seed to take root. 5. Conscious departure into the day. Before rising, declare firmly aloud, I go forth today as the living expression of Christ. Nothing can stop me. Nothing can confuse me. Nothing can harm me. Only God is only good manifests. Practice this rite every morning for 40 days. Repeat the cycle if you wish. Do not seek immediate results. Simply observe, feel, remain faithful. And one day you will discover that you no longer need to strive to think like Christ because Christ is already thinking in you. Epilogue. Every thought is a seed. Plant only those of the kingdom. Everything you have read, pondered, and practiced in this book leads to one point. Thought is the cause of all experience. There is no exception, no accident, no circumstance that escapes this law. You think, and what you think, if you hold it with persistence, manifests. The external world is only the mirror, the projection, the result. But the seed is always in the mind, in every thought you choose to accept. To think like Christ is not a religious act. It is a law of life, a conscious choice. It is to plant seeds of truth in the fertile ground of your soul, knowing that each will bear fruit. Thoughts of peace will bring harmony. Thoughts of abundance will bring provision. Thoughts of humility will heal your relationships. Thoughts of health will restore your body. Not because you deserve it, not because you strive, but because that is how the law works, because that is how the mind is designed, to create according to its content. Many believe they are at the mercy of circumstances, that life happens and they only react. But that is the great lie of worldly thought. The truth is that everything that comes to you has been summoned by your consciousness, not as punishment, not as judgment, but as correspondence. The mind emits and the universe responds. The mind sustains and form obeys. That is why Jesus said, "By their fruits you will know them." Matthew 7:20. Not by their intentions, not by their emotions, but by their fruits. And fruits always come from a mental seed. This book has not come to give you new ideas to entertain your intellect. It has come to remind you of what you already knew, that you are responsible for your world, that you have the power to choose each thought, that you are a creator, not a victim, and that you can manifest the kingdom here and now if you think from the kingdom. You don't need permission. You don't need intermediaries. You only need to decide and remain faithful to that decision. Each morning upon waking, you face a fertile field. You can sow fear, judgment, discouragement, worry, or you can sow faith, gratitude, clarity, purpose. No one can do this for you. No one can stop you from doing it because your mind is yours, and it is there where Christ waits, not in a distant heaven but in the present moment, not in another's vision but in your current thought. Now you know that thought is not innocent, that every idea is a cause, every word a form of gestation, and every action a consequence. That is why nothing is more important than watching your mind, nothing more urgent than training your thoughts, nothing more sacred than affirming the truth. I repeat this to you as one who plants in fertile soil. Every thought is a seed. Plant only those of the kingdom and your life will become a garden of God. Be still, breathe, decide. Final prayer. Father, thank you for reminding me that I am your thought. Thank you for planting in me the seed of Christ. From this day forward, I will not think as the world thinks. I will think as you do. I will not judge. I will affirm. I will not fear. I will trust. I will not lose myself. I will remember. The Christ in me thinks, speaks, and acts, and all that I am is an expression of your good. Thank you because I am already in the kingdom. Thank you because it is already done. Amen.